Great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jillian Cordial. I use she, her pronouns. I am the program manager for Carillon, and this is the webinar to learn more about the Masculinities and Family Health community. I will go ahead and pass it to the professor of that course.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Kevin Roy. I use he, his pronouns. I'm a professor in the Department of Family Science in the School of Public Health, and we are offering a new community for the first time this fall coming up. It's entitled Masculinities and Family Health. And so I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what the focus is of that community, what the dynamics are of the class, what the big question is, and why you might want to be really interested in taking that course. This is a course I've taught since 2017. It's the first time it's being offered as a Carillon course. And it's very popular. I've worked with over 1,000 students in those 5 years. And for some reason, they're really interested in talking about masculinities. I think it touches on so many issues that both men and women at the university are really engaged with. And I tend to follow the student's lead. There's a whole range of different issues we talk about in the course. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those today. You'll see in some of the pictures along the way that I've included. These are from some symposium sessions that we do as part of the course. So when I refer to the course, I'm going to be talking about my experience in teaching it in the past outside of the Carillon program. In terms of myself and where I'm coming from, I've been a professor at the University of Maryland for 18 years. I was born in California and never left the state until I was 18, and I came out here to study Soviet studies at Georgetown University in DC. Madeleine Albright was my mentor at Georgetown. I learned Russian. I did a whole bunch of things. And then I went to go teach high school in South Africa, and it was the final year of apartheid. And so I was teaching high school kids, and it was the best experience I've ever had. I was able to give back and really enjoyed learning how to teach, and really developed a sense of social justice and working in the community. And so that translated into my work. I was trained at the university, at Northwestern University in human development and social policy, earned a master's and a PhD. And I worked at Purdue University for 4 years and before I came to Maryland. Basically, I work with low-income fathers. I'm a fatherhood researcher. I've been working with fathers for over 30 years, and I work in community settings. So what that means is I work with community groups, with men in their communities who want to be involved in their kids' lives. And so we do what's called community-based participatory research. So we work closely with groups to align with what they're interested in, what they can offer the fathers, how they can help with resources to kind of change their lives. And I'm a qualitative researcher, so I do a lot of life history qualitative work. I'm very interested in the stories people tell about themselves kind of over their lifetimes. And for these young men, oftentimes these are young men who are, they've been incarcerated, they've gone through growing up in different communities. They've experienced violence in some of those communities. And so becoming a father is a real big piece of that. And becoming a man, basically dealing with masculinity, is important as well. Myself, I have 3 sons who have worked their way or are working their way through the University of Maryland. And so I'm very attuned to working with young people around these issues. I'm very excited. I've worked with freshmen and sophomore community populations primarily in this course. And so very excited about doing a freshman connections version of Man Up. And these, I'm in touch with my kids a lot, so I learn a lot. They've actually taken the course too. So I've learned a lot about growing up in Prince George's County and ways they think about what's changing, particularly in what's expected of men in their lives. The big question that leads this course really is the question of, is masculinity toxic? Another way of phrasing that is, how do masculinities shape family health and well-being? And toxicity, toxic masculinity is kind of a term that's been thrown around a lot in the past couple of years. The assumption sometimes is that men are toxic. Sometimes it's that men's behavior is toxic. And toxic to me as a public health person means that it has some impact on our mental and physical health. And so that's really what we look at. We look at men's development over time, particularly moving from boyhood into adolescence, young adulthood and living on campus, for example, into later adulthood. We look at issues of mental health, so trauma, depression, and suicide, particularly for men, the notion of how you deal with emotion management. We look very closely at the relationships or sometimes the lack of relationships in men's lives, their experiences of violence and trauma and war. We look a lot at racial and ethnic context for masculinity playing out. So we address issues of white supremacy and men's entitlement, for example. And then I bring in a lot of the fatherhood research that we do to kind of finish up the course, looking at family bonds, co-parenting, kin networks, really kind of more positive spins on masculinity. We find that the folks who are taking this course, oftentimes there's a large number of women taking the course because they want to figure out what's going on with guys. Men want to talk about what their experiences are because there aren't a lot of spaces to talk about these issues. So what can you expect to find in this course? This is a course that's very engaging. I use film, I use small discussion, we read books, we read articles. We're exposed to a lot of current topics every day. There's something that touches on these topics around masculinity. But I want to challenge all the students in this course, and I want to have them discover a bit about themselves and about each other, and really looking at some really tough questions facing our communities today. One of the things that we do, for example, is one of our assignments is we do an interview with people's fathers, with students' fathers or a father figure. And that turns out to be one of the most important things in the course because students never have a chance to do that. And it makes it very real, kind of grounds it in their family experience. In terms of what this means for opportunities moving forward and why start here, what I've found is that students who work through this course really become interested in, for example, the mental health skills that they're learning, or they realize that they need to learn. So that kind of applied skills piece. We do a lot of talking about mental health first aid, how to identify what depression looks like in men, and then how to deal with trauma, for example, and how men who've been exposed to war or police brutality and violence or gang violence, how we work through those issues around trauma. We talk a lot about health. And so I've had students who go into a pre-med track, into medical school, get in touch with me and say, you know what I learned about men's health in your course was part of my exam to get into medical school. And they said, I haven't learned that anywhere else. And that was a really pleasant surprise for me. And then we also talk about real world issues, about advocating for change in kind of what we expect of men, advocating for policy change. And so that spurs a lot of students' interests in public policy or political science or social work, for example, kind of making changes in people's lives. There's also a strong emphasis, because I'm a social scientist, in a public health school, we really look at what that means for academic growth, what it means for research. And so this is a very interdisciplinary course. I'm pulling from sociology, psychology, public health, anthropology, kind of a full range of fields, and making them very applied, because this is a lot about not being in a laboratory, but being in the real world and looking at all of our experiences and the experiences in our communities as well. A typical course is, a typical day in class is very much kind of inquiry-driven teamwork. And so we take on big questions. Every week we kind of deal with a set of lectures and questions around a particular topic. We use multiple media modes, and I encourage a lot of that. I have students who are currently making movies as they interview their fathers, and that's a really neat experience to go through. But I want students to have some ownership in the course. That's the whole point of Carillon, I think, and it's driven by the team and the inquiry that they're bringing to the field of masculinities. And so I kind of offer a range of topics, and then we're going to build in a piece where students can really drive what they're interested in and expand on that. So the team project is something that I'm still kind of building, and I'm really interested in student input into what a team project might look like. Something we've done in the past is we've had a health literacy symposium. We've done this both virtually and in person. So we have different groups in class, usually 5 people in each group, presenting on a health literacy topic like prostate cancer, healthy relationships, police brutality, interpersonal violence, a whole range of topics, opioid abuse, things that affect men's lives. And they design these presentations as a way to kind of inform their classmates and anyone else who comes to the symposium about these health issues. So we create flyers that are based on health literacy guidelines from the CDC. It's a lot of fun. We all learn a lot. And the course also really, kind of involves integrating teams with this problem-solving aspect. And I wanted to share a quote from a student who took the course, and actually this was a Carillon student who took this course a few years ago. She had interviewed her father, and she came back to me a year later and really told me how important it was to kind of have that experience with him. And how it changed their relationship. And I realized that I've done over 1,000 of these projects with students, these interviews, and it's probably the greatest source of intervention that I could do to kind of improve those relationships with students and their families. So she said the interview challenged him, her father, to answer uncomfortable questions. My older brother died when he was 19, and this event left my father feeling extremely guilty and upset for the rest of his life. While losing a child is incredibly painful, I learned how it might go against being masculine to present these emotions and grief. So it gave her a sense of kind of what was difficult for him and why it might have been difficult, not just because of his limitations as a person or his, what he was coming up against, but that the expectations of men, there's a stigma on mental health challenges. There's a stigma on presenting your emotions. There's a stigma on crying. So in a way, again, it's kind of hoping that we can create teams and projects to deal with some of these issues in masculinity. And my hope is that potentially one of the team projects might be something we could do here on campus, where we could work with, for example, the student health department and look at kind of healthy masculinity interventions on campus that are peer-led, peer designed. So just a few ideas. So I'm going to pass this over, and I think we're going to go to introductions of our students next.
Hi, y'all. So my name is Dennis Kalinin. I go by he, him pronouns. I'm a business undecided freshman. And I was in Carillon last semester in the iGive program. And the reason I chose iGive was because I wanted to learn more about philanthropy and learn how to give back to community and be able to give back to the community. And a memorable moment from the community was the grant ceremony we had at the end of the semester, where we actually awarded a $7,500 grant to a reproductive justice nonprofit. And that was amazing. It's probably once in a lifetime opportunity. And the biggest takeaway from the course is that philanthropy is really not just about money, even though a lot of people might think it is. It's about being able to do good and learning about how to do good in any way you can, whether it be volunteering or helping out or teaching someone about something. And general experience in Carillon was, and then my class was, there's just student focused, very engaged, very student conversation heavy. And it was a lot of fun. I got a lot of great moments that I could share with my friends, and I made a lot of connections from it.
Hello, I'm Josh Cohn. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a government and politics major. So I chose the digital media law community because I was interested in how kind of law in the online world kind of intersected, because most of what we do today is online and there isn't much legal precedent or laws about how to go about that. So I wanted to learn. And one of my most memorable moments from our class was at the start of the year when we took a trip to DC, went to the National Archives. We were able to see the Bill of Rights, Constitution. That was really fun. My biggest takeaway from the course is that it's important to make your own ethics code for the internet, because there isn't that much legal regulation online. So it's important for you to figure out what you want to do. And then just my general experience in Carillon, I've really enjoyed it. The most important part for me has been the living learning aspect, in which you're taking classes with people that you're also living with. So you're able to create a pretty nice connection with them. It makes a bigger school feel a lot smaller, and some people you'll probably create some nice connection with.
All right, that is the end of the presentation. Please reach out to carolyn@umd.edu if you have questions. You can also find that under our contact tab on the website. Does anyone have any final words?
I just want to share a sense of excitement that, again, this is a new community and we welcome your engagement with it. I'm excited to see what the fall holds for the incoming class. And so look forward to meeting all of you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great night.